Hi everyone, it's Corey Jones with Remax Sarnia Realty, Home Team Advantage, and proud sponsor of LoveSarniLambton.ca. I'm here with Marcel Laporte and Darryl Wallis at BMC Pharmacy on Victoria Street. Welcome, gentlemen, or I guess you're welcoming me. I'm here, but thanks for joining me on this episode, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
For those of you guys who don't know, or where people don't know where BMC is located, where exactly are you? I say Victoria Street, but where is that exactly?
So we're at 118 Victoria Street North, which is just across from the parking lot that most people would know where Tang's would be.
Gotcha.
So we're right across the street from that parking lot. Bayside used to exist beside us.
Okay.
It's now a big open space.
Yeah.
So probably been here for about 10 years.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. How long have you been here? 10 years. And up until recently, a few years ago, there was not even a sign on the building, so people might not have known you're here, but you're here, and sign is displayed proudly out front now, right? So
Absolutely.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, you're independently owned and operated, right?
That's correct.
So can you tell us some of the benefits to somebody dealing with you as opposed to, say, one of the big box places like Shoppers Drug Mart or something like that?
Shoppers Drug. We'll keep this very cordial.
Yeah, for sure. Keep it cordial. Yeah.
So basically, in an environment where you have ownership that is local, what ends up happening is you can be a lot more nimble. You can react to what's going on. You also get the type of service that is unheard of in those establishments. How often have people called in to one of those box stores and been put on hold or put on to a various service waiting for someone to pick up the line? Every single time someone calls in here, the answering service doesn't exist. We pick it up.
Awesome.
So obviously after hours there's voicemail and whatnot, but we really pride ourselves in being one-on-one. We know our patients, and with that comes a level of service that they can't even touch.
Awesome. Yeah, and I was actually impressed when I came in here, the amount of staff that was in here, because it is much smaller, but everybody was here, and the other thing is you could see it was much more of a family environment too, right? Like everybody got along, everybody teasing each other and things like that, which is nice too, because when you're doing business somewhere, you want to make sure especially when it's medications, you want to make sure you feel comfortable, right?
Yeah, well, and it's, you always hear of certain systems that, the box stores have in terms of medication management, and at the end of the day, the most important part of that is the knowledge of the patient themselves and the trust that you establish with the people that serve you and deal with you on a daily basis or weekly or monthly, and that's something that you can't guarantee in locations, whereas with us,
it's you.
Yeah, well, we're not pretty to look at, but we're quite good.
I disagree, to be honest with you, but and you guys are both pharmacists here. You're the only two pharmacists on staff at this location?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. So everybody else?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really almost kind of sets us apart. Like, we have both worked at large chains before, where you're just a pharmacist and patients come in on a day-to-day basis and they may or may not actually know who you are.
Right.
But if somebody comes in the door today, tomorrow, the next day, they know it's either going to be Marcel or it's going to be Darryl.
Right.
Like, we're not just a pharmacist, we're their pharmacist.
You're their pharmacist. And I think that's huge. And I mean, I think it's important with any business in general, but especially when you're dealing with something as delicate and as important as their medications, right? Like, the people's lives depend on these things, so that's huge. And I'm certainly I do frequent some box stores too, but I kind of equate it to on a smaller scale. But once upon a time I bought a lawn tractor from one of the box stores, and I literally felt like I was buying a chocolate bar. Like nobody had, it was just like whatever. Like they didn't care. And I'm not suggesting that the pharmacists at some of those places don't care, but when you have employees coming and going all the time, it's not the same, right? It's not a passion. It's just kind of a paycheck, right? So a lot of times. So.
And speaking back to your staff point, we try to maintain an adequate level of staffing so that we can provide that level of service that our patients expect. Yeah. Generally speaking, if I've worked in the past at other locations with similar volume, they'll have half the staff.
Right.
And so we make sure that, if Marcel wants to go do a vaccine, he wants to go do some minor ailments prescribing, I'm here to back him up.
That's awesome.
We've got 2 or 3 technicians and assistants always working, always making sure that even if we're physically elsewhere helping another patient, that work doesn't stop.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So actually, you touched on that. So doing vaccines. So you are providing vaccines here as well, right on location, or do you go elsewhere for that? Or?
So we obviously provide both flu and COVID vaccinations that would be much like you would see at public health.
Right.
We also offer all the other vaccines that pharmacists are enabled to administer. much like you would see anywhere else.
Okay.
And obviously, we have done a number of outreaches into some of the seniors' homes,
Okay.
in the city here. And that's, not just, because some of them are our patients, but also because it facilitates those particular establishments to have someone come in and get it all done at once. It's a
Right.
lot more efficient for them.
Right.
For us, it gives us another opportunity to reach out in the community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And and again, as far as vaccines are concerned, I mean, a lot of people don't love vaccines, right? They're a little nervous about getting different things. So if they know you and trust you and know you're not just another face who might be different next week, then it's nice to know that too. So that.
Yeah, and it's it makes a big difference if you go to someone's in a lot of these situations it's their home, right? So
Yep.
we're going to their home
Yep.
to provide them with a service, and they don't have to worry about transportation. They don't have to worry about the logistics of getting their their daughter or son to take them out.
Right.
And it's in an environment that is very welcoming to them, and they're comfortable. So
Right.
all of the other anxieties that sort of go along with that are sort of evaporated as a result of us just being there.
That's awesome. And you guys, are there certain nursing homes in particular that you partner with, or do you go to all of them, or is it?
So yeah, like the government opened it up a little bit in terms of allowing pharmacies to go into these homes, mostly because there's always a stretch when it comes to healthcare and getting some of these things done.
Right.
And so we had been into a few of them already, and in the fall, they had asked those who we'd already partnered with to sort of establish who they were choosing to do it.
Okay.
And we just followed through on those commitments. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
That's great. So a lot of the ones in this area, in particular, you probably are some of the seniors' buildings too, or no?
yeah, so Sandpiper is right on the end of the road with us.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So
Oh,
we
right.
were there earlier last week,
Okay.
and then we were at a couple of the SNR homes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So one we went to was Landmark Village on Exmouth, which I'm sure you can imagine with the construction that was
Oh my
going on
goodness!
there
Yeah,
was
right
a
by our office. It's
disaster.
awful. Yeah.
So, even for those patients who maybe could get out to their doctor, could get out to public health normally, with all that construction along there, it was just a disaster for them to try to logistically manage that.
Yeah.
So we were able to go in and get not just the residents, but the staff members, kitchen staff, nursing staff,
Oh, awesome.
and all of the residents as well. So it was really great to just be there for a solid 4 or 5 hours, and
Yeah.
I think we did over 300 vaccines that
Is
day.
that right?
Alone. So-
Over 300 at Landmark.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's crazy. So that's a lot of vaccines. So did the two of you go together to do that, or do you does one kind of man the fort here and one go there, or do you take shifts, or is that how it works?
Yeah, so we sent Darryl went with one of our technicians and then another staff to sort of man the paperwork.
Yep.
And I kept the home fires burning.
Wow.
On that day, and we just sort of swapped out when I was over at Sandpiper, and he did the same. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's crazy. That's a lot of vaccines.
Yeah.
It was a busy day.
I imagine, and like I say, I'm sure there's some people who are a little resistant to it too, right? They're just not so excited to get them.
Yeah.
So it's that's crazy. So as far as medications are concerned, do you have access to the same medications as the box
Oh,
stores?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We have our own stock here that covers 90% of what we need. We have good relationships with a couple of other pharmacies in town that if
Okay.
in a pinch, if there's something that we need right away, we can source.
Oh, nice.
And then in terms of ordering for medications that might be a little more specialized, generally speaking, within 24 hours we have most things.
Wow.
We do carry a fair stock of medications that are specific to the clients that we deal with.
Yeah.
Including hepatitis C medications and things of that nature.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, so you've got all that, and with the other store, because you've got another location in Chatham,
Right.
do you rely on do you help each other out too if there's a availability? Like, do you run stuff back and forth? Or you don't need to really do that.
So generally speaking, we have ties within the city
Nice.
that we can do that with. Obviously, there are some situations where we will run medications between the two,
Yeah.
but those tend to be more on a large scale. If there's
Right.
a shortage of something in one, we'll just courier it between the two. But
Gotcha.
we generally are able to make do with what we have in the city.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, I was checking out your website because I always try to do that and do a little research on you guys and the store and things like that. Now, one of the things I noticed is that you provide naloxone kits and also training for that. Can you describe to those who don't know what that's for?
So naloxone is basically an antidote for opiates.
Okay.
So the idea is that if someone were to receive or to take too much of an opiate, and they put themselves in a state where they have overdosed, naloxone's purpose is to reverse that.
Okay.
So much like you would use an EpiPen for someone who's having an allergic reaction, naloxone temporarily reverses the effects of the opiates. And one of the big things that occurs is that people will stop breathing or breathe very shallowly, and as a result they become deficient of oxygen or hypoxic, and the end result is that when your oxygen levels get low enough, then your heart can stop, and that's generally speaking how people who have an overdose tend to expire as a result
of their heart.
Well, basically everything starts to shut down. If you don't have enough oxygen in your body, then your brain starts shutting things down to try and preserve things. So this is a naloxone kit that contains 2 doses of Narcan or naloxone.
Okay.
This is something that we provide, through a program that the government subsidizes to anyone that needs one. Okay. We've provided these kits to a lot of businesses in town. We've also done a lot of outreach through Golf Courses Canada, and we also did the Ski Association. Okay. So our kits can be found in quite a number of cities in Ontario as a result of that outreach. And Darryl and I have done training for quite a number of people. So
you'll actually go out to some of these different places, do training for different organizations and things, so that people there are trained if they were to have somebody in their premises.
So we generally train the trainers. So what we both with the golf courses and with Ski Canada, we went to their conferences and trained all the health and safety at all the various locations. Okay. And then provided them with kits to take back to golf courses or ski lifts. On a preventative basis, if someone were to run into that type of a situation while they're there, then the courses obviously have something to help deal with that, and no one wants to see that occur. And there's quite a bit of evidence that shows that the more kits that you have out there, the greater likelihood that someone is going to be around that's going to know how to use it and ultimately save someone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we've done training for local companies as well. So a lot of the construction companies, shutdowns at Shell and Nova and that type of thing, where we'll provide, a bulk amount of kits and then either train the same thing, the health and safety committees, or we'll go in and do a training session for 30, 50, 100 employees at the same time.
That's so cool. So so everybody there essentially is prepared.
Yes.
Exactly.
As long as they're paying attention. As long as they're there that day and they're paying attention, they could save somebody's life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and these are a nasal dose, so just like you use any other nasal spray
is that
for
right?
allergies or sinus congestion.
Okay.
Works just the same.
That's all
super
just
simple.
Really? And what's the like how fast does it normally react? Or is it instant?
So it'll start working within 3 to 4 minutes. Typical duration of action varies based on what the patient may have been exposed to or may have ingested.
Right.
But it's safe for all ages. So if you had a child at home who may have got into the medicine cabinet, it can help with that. I've heard anecdotally that it works in pets, but we've never come across anything like that.
Thank goodness.
But just like Marcel said, having more kits out there really helps to reduce the stigma associated with opiate overdose, because 90+% of overdoses are accidental, and they can happen to anyone who's on Tylenol 3s for a toothache or arthritis, back pain. We see a lot of accidental overdoses, and having those kits out there really helps.
For sure. Actually, it's interesting you say that. I had a good friend of mine who was in the hospital for kidney stone, and he's a great big guy, and they were giving him morphine, and because his kidneys weren't processing it, they kept giving it to him, and it wasn't breaking down, and he actually overdosed. His heart stopped, and they had to come in and shock him and everything else, right? So I don't know if that would help with something like that, but it's but I'm sure, like you say, accidents happen, right? So, so does it work with all opiates? Like, is it a okay? So
so whether it be a synthetic or one that's derived directly from the poppy plant, this will in fact work for all of those things. Obviously, in the media, we've heard all kinds of things about powdered fentanyl and whatnot. Sure. So although powdered fentanyl is extremely potent, given enough naloxone, it would eventually reverse it. So yes, it does work for all of those things. The basic understanding is that the right amount of naloxone to give is whatever it takes to reverse it. So, we've heard of using a few kits in order to get that done. Other times it takes quite a number of them. It really depends on the potency of the opiate that you're dealing with.
Gotcha. So those are, if somebody was to come in, are they able to pick them up over the counter?
Absolutely.
Or, and that's free of charge.
Of course.
Free of charge.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So that's so cool. So now, you know, it's not a secret, obviously, in I mean, the opioid it's a big problem, right across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys noticed an increase in usage or abuse since COVID in particular? Like, is that a thing, or is that just what kind of my assumption that maybe since that time?
So I think there was absolutely an increase over that period of time. You know, part of it is a result of you know, the drug use culture is one in which they often tend to withdraw somewhat.
Right.
And COVID was sort of a perfect scenario where there's not a lot of contact. There was a number of subsidies that were available for people's income, and oftentimes it was more than what they were earning in the first place.
Right.
And obviously with powdered fentanyl being what it was, there's a lot of that available. So kind of a real perfect storm in terms of how that all transpired. And unfortunately with that, it's sort of carried forward.
Right.
And it's not as if it's, you know, COVID's done and all of this just dropped off the earth. It's really persisted.
Right.
And there is some suggestion that, you know, although there was some really nasty spikes of overdose deaths through COVID, it hasn't really subsided all that much.
Okay.
So we're still seeing a very large number of people overdosing. It's not just in Sarnia, it's sort of right across the board.
Right. Yeah.
And just like with any illicit drug supply, it's not always perfect. And so there's a lot of things that are being intermixed with that are also problematic. So we're seeing a lot of that. So it's you know, it's not always easy to talk about some of the things that are going on, but this is definitely something that very much came to light during COVID, and there was a number of reasons why that occurred, and we're continuing to have to deal with the repercussions of that.
It's sad, and I'm expecting, I assume that in recent years, as opposed to when you both got into this industry initially, you've probably seen a huge spike in opioid.
Yeah, I think it's something that it's not just new. This has been going on. You know, not that I'm a big movie guy, but even if you look at some of the movies from in the westerns, 1800s and whatnot, opium's been around. Yeah. And its abuse started right about then, and it's going to continue forever.
So it's become more public lately.
Right. So what basically happens is that, you know, as with anything else, people become a little more aware of its happening, and no one likes to discuss that there's an issue.
Right.
But we were forced to as a result of just how nasty some of this has been. Yeah. And I think Sarnia has seen a massive increase in it, and you know, housing has been a challenge. All of those things all run into this, and it's not just a homeless person's problem. There's guys that work in the plants. 100%. There's guys that have very, very good jobs that also struggle. So it's,
for sure,
you know, the idea that it's only the subculture that we really need to be aware of. It's everywhere. For sure. Yeah, and it's just becoming more. People are becoming more aware. But just like mental health, right? Yeah, it always existed. We just didn't know it existed, right? Back when we were young, it was just not a thing, right? Yeah. And now people talk a little bit about a little bit more. So you touched on COVID, or I mentioned about COVID. One of us mentioned about COVID, and we don't like to talk about COVID too often either. But are you guys still seeing people come in for testing for COVID, or like who are actually sick with COVID? Is it still a thing, or is it?
Yeah, so we're definitely still seeing cases for sure.
Yeah.
This time of year, it can be tricky because you've got all kinds of respiratory viruses circulating, whether it be COVID, RSV, the flu, pneumonia. So there's a lot of illnesses that are more prevalent this time of year.
Sure.
Certainly, we're still seeing cases of COVID. We're still doing lots of vaccines. We still have free test kits to give out as well.
Okay.
We're not doing as much of those travel tests that we saw previously, where, you know, in order to cross the border, you needed to show that negative test.
Yeah, most places aren't asking for it anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
But as far as the cases, yes, they're still there. People are still getting sick.
Yeah.
You know, we have a relatively healthy staff in terms of numbers.
Good.
So if any of our staff are feeling like they shouldn't be coming in to work, we have enough staff that we can say, hey, look, take a couple days off. We'll be fine. We'll manage. We try to keep, like Marcel said, sufficient staff that we're nimble and able to adjust if we need to.
That's awesome. I actually thought about that lots of times with you guys being in this industry. I mean, people come in and they're sick, right? You're obviously more susceptible to it too, right? So it's and you're handing things off all the time, and it's yeah. So
yeah, during COVID, we actually split the staff. So
Did
one
ya?
pharmacist was on one crew, and the other pharmacist was on the other, and we basically operated as two distinct
Okay.
workforces, just to try and if something were to have gone sideways, no
Yeah.
matter what, we would still have a whole other crew that technically should be separate from the other. So
right.
I think that we're not the only staff to have done that.
No, no.
But that being said, those are some of the measures that we took during that time to try and mitigate that. We're a little bit past that now.
Yeah, thank goodness. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I noticed on your website it says one of you guys. Well, it says that you're available by walk-in or appointment 365 days a year. I don't know if you wanted me to talk about that because your families might think, oh my goodness, why are you bringing that up? But is that reality?
It's the thing. We are literally open every day of the year. We're not open for 12 hours on Christmas Day.
Right.
But we do have hours, and
Oh,
we
you-
publicize them.
Oh wow.
So that ultimately, I became a pharmacist not for the paycheck.
Okay.
I come from a small town, and the pharmacist that worked there, he had to come in a number of times for me, whether it be from a hockey injury or,
Right.
or whatnot. And I always thought that was a very honorable thing to do, to serve the patients that entrust their care to you. So it's not all that different.
Right.
So we do our very best to provide the service that if I was on the other side of the counter, I would hope to be able to receive.
I love that. I love that, and I think that's so important, right? And that's I say that all the time in our industry too. Is there's nothing wrong with trying to earn money. I mean, you don't work with, you don't work for fun typically, but
No.
so paycheck is important. But if you remember that there's always somebody on the other side of, I hate to use the term transaction, but on the other side of the counter, whatever the case may be, I think you approach things a little bit differently. And just even talking to you guys, I mean, reviewing your website before you came and talking to you guys, I mean, you can see that you guys actually have a heart for what you're doing. Like you actually care about your people, which is huge, right? And it's not to suggest other places don't, but knowing and getting that feel from you obviously makes me personally feel more comfortable with you. So I'm sure it goes a long way with the people who are coming on a regular basis. So you mentioned you're from a small town. Where are you from, if not Sarnia?
So when I grew up, it was called Bell River. Now it's called Lakeshore. A small little town on Lake St. Clair, just outside of Windsor.
Okay.
It's a little bedroom community to the auto workers in Windsor.
Gotcha. And then you said, hey, I'm going to move to the booming metropolis of Sarnia, or did you take kind of a tour around before you ended up
It's
here?
all about a girl.
All about a girl.
It's all about a girl.
Yeah, we all know that story. Yeah.
So I met my wife while I was working up north in Tobermory, and I went off to university in Winnipeg, and when I got back, we got married, and we initially settled in KW, but then decided that it's best to have kids where family is.
Yep.
So because she is from Petrolia, we moved back there, established ourselves there for a bit, and then we recently it's been like 8 years. We built a house just outside of Rigdon.
Very cool. Very cool. And how about yourself?
So I was born in Sarnia. I've been here my whole life.
Amazing.
I think at this point I've worked in just about every pharmacy in Sarnia for a little bit here or there.
Yeah.
When I was a student, I worked at the hospital and at Hogan Pharmacy, and I've worked for some of the larger stores at Shoppers, and I've done some shifts here, there, and everywhere. And came to Marcel's team a few years ago. It's just been like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Kind of a different environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sarnia is where my family is. It's where I met my wife, and our kids grew up here. So
Gotcha.
When I went to school here, you'd always hear kids talk about wanting to get out of Sarnia.
For sure. Yeah.
And it's funny now seeing all the people who moved away coming back.
For sure.
Because they recognize that there's something here.
Yeah.
You've got the water, you've got the summers, 100%. There's concerts, activities, and it's a different city now than it was before. It's a lot more multicultural, more restaurants, more entertainment options. So yeah, it's really nice to see the city growing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree completely. And actually, so I did a bit of a tour as well. So Sarnia, went to Winnipeg, went to Barrie, went to Kingston, back to Sarnia, and kind of back and forth. Not that I like to talk about it a lot because this is where we're staying for good now, but definitely I left a few times and came back because, like you say, and everywhere we lived had water. So I wouldn't call it water. I wouldn't call it Winnipeg. I lived in Winnipeg too. I wouldn't count the water there, but anyways,
it's kind of brown.
It's kind of brown, but nowhere compares to Lake Huron. And our beaches are spectacular, right? So it's and you don't realize until you're gone what you're missing, right? Like the cleanliness of the city. Like it's just like there's so many good things. So that's cool. So born and raised, loved it.
Yep.
Took a little bit of a tour, did school elsewhere, and said I got to come back. And
Yeah, I went to school in Toronto.
Okay,
So
yeah,
just
oh,
came
yeah.
back here afterwards. I worked in Toronto for about 6 months and thought
That's enough of that.
Maybe not. Yeah.
It's there's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
It's a big difference for sure. Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I was going to ask. So if needed on the days off, do you guys like rotate holidays and things like that? But I mean, I wasn't sure if you were like just on call on Chris, but you actually have opening hours.
Mm-hmm.
So you just draw straws, or you kind of arm wrestle for it, or what do you?
We usually alternate between holidays, so he'll do one, I'll do one, he'll do one, I'll do one, that kind of thing throughout the year. We're open at 6 a.m. in the morning,
Wow.
Monday to Friday. I'm not really a morning person, so Marcel typically takes
Gotcha.
the morning shifts, and
Gotcha.
I'll take the evening shifts.
Awesome.
And that works out well for both of us. But as far as holidays, yeah, like we take them in turn,
turns.
and yep.
Nice.
And then same during the week. If there's a day Marcel has something going on, I'll come in. If there's a day I've got something going on, he'll come in and cover me. And
Nice. So you're a good team. Just help each other.
Yeah.
So you're not typically here. So you start at 6. So you're not typically here this late in the day.
Not normally. No,
Okay.
I'm usually gone by 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I leave Darryl in charge.
Yeah. And then you close. So you open at 6. You close at.
We usually close at 6 on Thursdays. We're open until 7.
Okay. Cool.
And
So
then
good.
on the weekends we're open 7:30 to 2. So
Okay.
it gives us enough time every day of the week where if people need something at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, they've just got out of Emerge.
Right.
We're really the only people who are open.
Yeah, for
So-
sure. For sure. Yeah, that absolutely would be. So that's interesting. So, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm not sure if it was your pharmacist in Bell River. By the way, thanks for teaching me. I thought it was still called Bell River, so it shows how much I know. What made you decide to become a pharmacist?
Very roundabout way of getting there.
Okay.
I fully intended on being a toxicologist and working at a crime lab.
Oh, cool.
And the dean of the School of Pharmacy in Winnipeg came from the crime lab, and he told me to get my degree in pharmacy if I wanted to do that.
Really?
I got my degree in pharmacy and liked it too much.
That's cool.
So didn't decide to pursue that any further, to become more of a lab guy. I tend to like people too much to be in a lab alone.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. And you wouldn't want to be in a toxicology place in Winnipeg. In
No,
Winnipeg.
no, that lab is a little different.
A little busier, yeah, for sure. And how about yourself? What?
So I have a fairly complicated medical history, to put it mildly.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time, hospitals, doctors, pharmacies, and the pharmacist is always the last person you see, kind of
Right.
the last line of defense before you get that medication to help you feel better. So I'd had a lot of interactions with pharmacists. I worked in pharmacies from the time I was 14 years old.
Wow.
So it's just the environment of being able to kind of be there for people when they really needed you, when they weren't feeling their best. And
Yeah.
the nice thing about pharmacies, especially here, but in most pharmacies, is you get to see those patients over time. So if I help Mrs. Smith with something today on whatever day it is, Tuesday, I suppose,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to call her or see her on Thursday or Friday and see how she's doing. So it allows that really close follow-up where,
Yeah.
if you're a physician in a hospital with 20,000 patients or however many patients, or, you might see somebody in the Emerge one time and wonder what happened to them. In pharmacy, you really get that close follow-up to see how they're doing. And, at this point in my career, I've been a pharmacist for just about 13 years. I'm starting to see some of my patients have children, and so I get to see their care and follow them over time as well. So it's really, really nice.
I'd say, does that make you feel old? But you're still young, so no, for
Yeah.
sure not. For sure
We're
not.
getting there. We're getting
So you mentioned that you follow up with Mrs. Smith. I mean, Mrs. Smith's a fictional
Yeah.
patient. I'm sure you probably have a patient, Mrs. Smith. But is that something you guys actually do? Is call to follow up to see how the medication's working for them and things like that? Is that like, I obviously couldn't do it with everybody, but is it something that you try?
So I think it tends to be a little bit more targeted. There's certain things where someone's starting a new regimen of whether it be for cholesterol or blood pressure or diabetes, or we have someone come in for a minor ailment and they have a bladder infection or whatever. We do call and find out whether
That's
it's
amazing.
working, or if there's any questions to follow up, because sometimes we have people that we see at the counter and they're somewhat overwhelmed.
For sure.
They were just told that they have to deal with this, and they're really not sure where that leads to, and now we're giving them medications for it, and at the end of the day, they have time to go home and think it through a little bit, and there's almost always a question or two that they didn't have the opportunity to ask.
Yeah.
So those follow-ups really are little nuggets of gold that give us an opportunity to have an intervention with them that left unsaid, they could wonder about, and if they're not taking the medication correctly, or if there's some kind of an issue that comes up, at least they know that they can fall back on us and
For sure.
And follow up.
So for sure, and that's amazing. And also, the reality is that sometimes people may have a side effect to the medication.
Yeah,
They maybe not even realize that it could be causing other issues,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And we actually have a personal experience with our eldest. Obviously born with autoimmune disease, but it didn't kind of develop, didn't kind of present itself until second year university, and it was because she was on medications, and it kind of impacted her immune system, and she got sick, or she was sick already, and now it's full blown and it's there, right? And so had somebody followed up and said, hey, how are you feeling? She would have gone, I actually feel terrible, and I feel worse than I did before. Oh, well, maybe we should get you back and get you back to the doctor and figure it out. So that's huge. That, to me personally, guys, like that blows me away, because you don't get that. You worked at the big box places. You know that doesn't happen. So listen, if somebody wanted to become a pharmacist today, what's that path look like? So they obviously have to get some good grades in school. They're not a student like I was in high school, and then they're off to university. How long is that program typically?
Yeah, so there's the path usually leads you to university, obviously, to do somewhat of an undergrad. Most schools will allow you to apply after you have at least 1 or 2 years under your belt.
Okay.
More often than not, it is relatively competitive.
Okay.
So most people who get into pharmacy school will have a degree under their belt, whether it be a 3-year or whatever. And then pharmacy typically is 4 years on top of that.
Okay.
Right? So when I went through, it was a little bit different. I got it done in 6. I don't know what Darryl did his in.
The same, yep. 2 years in undergrad and then 4 years in the pharmacy program.
Okay, so it's a commitment. It's not just people aren't just going to go, I'm gonna maybe become a pharmacist and just do it it has to be a commitment. It's you're learning all kinds of things. Obviously, working with this, that's pretty important stuff. So now you do other. I saw on the website you will actually help people, or you can now do diagnosis and things like that of kind of minor ailments, or what in particular do you guys see?
Right. So Ontario's sort of progressed a little bit in terms of allowing pharmacists to have their own scope for which we can intervene on certain issues and actually prescribe medications to help with these things.
Okay.
So other provinces have been doing it for years.
Oh, is that
some
right?
have almost an open door in terms of what pharmacists can do. Ontario, like anything else, baby steps.
Yep, baby steps.
So we're up to 19 different issues that we can deal with.
Wow.
And these are things that you commonly would have just gone to your physician for.
Okay.
So whether it be for the one that we always joke around about is your hemorrhoids,
right?
And things of that nature.
Yeah.
And the idea is that these are things that we often would help patients with prior to this.
Right.
And we'd sort of get by with what was available over the counter.
Right.
Knowing full well that there's other products that we could use that are prescription only.
Right.
So in this particular situation, we assess the patient based on, sort of what symptoms they're having and whether there's anything likely to be going on that is more serious that would require, a physician's intervention on.
Right.
And as long as that criteria is met in terms of, it being likely the issue that we're seeing in front of us, we have a scope that we can prescribe to help the patients without them having to go to Emerge to have it dealt with.
Awesome.
And I think the biggest ones we see lately and consistently are UTIs.
Okay.
GERD, which is a big one, so heartburn.
Yeah.
We see a lot of cold sores this time of year.
Okay.
And then impetigo, in children we see a lot. And the nice thing about it is we can do it either in person, so if you want to come in and talk to us in person, no problem. It's also something we can do virtually. So on the phone,
awesome.
a Zoom call, hop on with us and we can kind of go over and see if it's appropriate to be prescribing. There's certainly cases we've come across where a patient might think it's just a cold sore, they might think it's just a UTI, when there's some signs present that it could be a more severe kidney infection, where we'll say, it's really not appropriate for us to be prescribing. This is something you really need to see your doctor in the Emerge, ASAP to get it sorted.
Right.
And of course, we always prefer that the patients have those prescriptions filled here, because then we can follow up and all that. Yeah. But it is something where, we've had people call from outside of the city, they're in Petrolia, it's inconvenient for them to get all the way here.
Right.
We do offer free delivery within the
Do
city.
you? Okay, yeah.
But it's the type of thing where we can write the prescription and send it wherever is most convenient.
Amazing. That's awesome.
And-
So those type of things, do they have to make an appointment for if they've got a kind of is that, or they don't
So,
just walk in?
so we have on our website, obviously you may have seen where you can book your flu shot or your
Right.
COVID, and minor ailments are part of that.
Okay.
So you can book it that way, but oftentimes if you call in, we might not be able to do it instantaneously, but we
Right.
can say, give us 20 minutes and we'll call you back, and
Okay.
or if you're local and you want to come in, generally speaking, we can handle most of those things on a walk-in basis.
Awesome.
That's all part of being the nimble.
Right. Yeah.
We're not restricted to we're only allowed to do this between 2 and 2
Right.
and 5.
Yeah, you have to follow
right?
exactly that. And I
So-
own another business. It's a franchise, so I get it. Like, we have
Yeah.
to do what they say, right? So,
Right.
I assume that you're going to tell me you're nimble now, because as soon as I ask a question, I got the big smile over here, like, oh man, we have people show up all the time for things, and again, like you say, they get to know you and they trust you, and it's going to happen, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's awesome. So so listen, guys, obviously supporting local. I mean, you guys are local, and it's important, and some people don't understand 100% what supporting local is. And supporting local is you guys. I mean, this is your place, and this is putting food on your table. And sure, it's important to support people who have jobs as well in other places, but supporting local, to me, is huge, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. Any businesses in particular you find yourself frequenting in this beautiful city of ours?
So we always have some places that are near and dear. My family really enjoys the Twisted Arm.
Okay, yeah.
So good food there, and
Yeah.
the atmosphere is quite great. There's always going to be the local home hardware. I think everybody has a purpose for that.
Absolutely.
Ice Authority has a good portion of my son's
There you go.
allowance for his
Yeah.
hockey stuff. So
Yeah.
those are all good places.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I actually may go to Twisted Arm a little more than I should.
Yeah.
But, that's okay. Yeah. What about yourself?
So as you can imagine, working in pharmacy, we go through a lot of coffee.
There you go. Yep.
So we're at Blackwater a couple
Oh, yeah.
days,
Yeah.
often getting bags of coffee for the staff and
That's
things
awesome.
like that, because it's definitely necessary.
Okay.
As much as I say I'm not a morning person, there are some days where I'll cover for Marcel at 6, and so
Gotcha.
you need that extra cup of coffee for sure.
Gotcha.
Twisted Arm, of course, their nachos, like
Yeah,
you've talked about, just
Yeah.
divine.
Yeah.
And I might not look it, but I'm a little bit into fitness, so
I was gonna say you look pretty fit, so not so shocking me. Okay. So-
Ironworks and Phoenix, or
Yep.
the CrossFit gym in town, they're always nice to support, and they do a lot of good work for the community.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's awesome. So besides working, I mean, it sounds like you work all the time, but you both got families too. So what do you guys do in your spare time? What do you like to do?
So I own some property out in Brigden
Okay.
that is mostly trees.
Okay.
So I love being outside.
Nice.
So whether it's hunting and fishing or cutting wood,
Yeah.
I'm French, so we do maple syrup through the winter.
Nice.
So those are the things that I enjoy. Obviously, following my kids around to the various sports that they do is also a big thing.
Keeps you busy for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, enjoy
absolutely.
it while they're still young, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
as they get older, you know what? You miss it.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I can
mine
see
are all
how-
grown, so you
yeah.
definitely miss it for sure.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
so just really quickly before I get to you about what you like to do in your spare time, Darryl. So you're French, so bilingual.
Absolutely.
So bilingual service as well. So
Yeah.
for all of you that were questioning that, tu es bilingue?
Bilang.
Well, I am not. So and that's all I got. But anyway,
That's all right.
Yeah. Anyway, and how about yourself? What do you like to do in your spare time?
So lots of outdoor activities, so
Yeah.
hiking, biking,
Yeah.
camping. We usually go up to Algonquin Park a couple of times
Nice.
every year.
Yeah.
And then photography would be my main kind
Awesome.
of side hobby, and helps me kind of get in a different frame of mind, so it's a lot more creative, and that different side of my brain is less analytical and
Right.
less data and type A.
Yeah.
It's more, it allows me to just kind of fully exercise my creative side.
Nice. And do you mind me asking what type of photography you like to do, or what you do primarily?
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. Fitness photography is something I do a lot of, and automotive photography as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. Well, guys, listen. Besides lovestartinglambton.ca, which you're going to be posted on tomorrow, where can people find you if they want to? Other than at your store, I mean, are you online? Or are you?
Yeah, absolutely.
you're
So
on
we're
socials?
we're on all the socials,
Okay.
and then we have a website, bmcpharmacy.ca.
Okay.
And most everything that we do, there's links on the website to access.
Okay. Awesome.
Obviously, whatever the phrase is, like and follow us.
Yep, there you go. Yep.
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of us, honestly, is
Pick up the phone.
it'll sound strange for a pharmacy, but yeah, just pick up the phone and call
Love
us.
it. And that's how I like to get a hold of people. So social media is great, and obviously this is going to be posted all over the place. And you know what? And part of what we do obviously is market you on all the different pages and things like that. But I like to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, especially if you've got questions, right? So that's huge. Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate your time. It was great getting to know you guys, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to pick up the phone. They've invited you to do so. If you have any questions about real estate or want to chat about the market, it is all over the place, and there's lots of confusion as to what's happening. Give us a call, or you can check us out at hometeamadvantage.ca. Phone number is 519-331-5552. For any of your prescription needs, these are the guys you want to see. BMC Pharmacy on Victoria. And Marcel and Darryl will be happy to have you. Again, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
It never stops.